Welcome and thank you for coming. I'd like to start today with where we left off, then talk about where we are headed. The last 20 games of the season gave us a glimpse of our future, and we established our offensive identity, pace, ball movement, threes. Most importantly, we showed cohesion, and we got better. We were 14th on offense and 9th on defense. Those numbers are encouraging. This year, excited for the season with an established and young core. We are building a strong foundation that will continue to develop while learning to win together. Josh is back. We're happy to resign him to an extension. He's part of our future. 𝗁𝗶𝗹 affirmed his spot as a leader last year, and we look forward to his continued growth and contribution this season. Those two players showed us that they have star potential. Matas returning for year 2. Ayo and Troy are back from injuries and ready to play. Julian, Pat, Dalen, Noah had a good summer of work. Vets like 𝗁cie and 𝗁𝗏 are back and critical leaders to the success of our group. In addition, we added 𝗦𝗫ci h𝗁𝗶𝗹. Among other skill sets, he brings the toughness to defense that we want to cultivate. On the team side, we have flexibility as we have many players going into free agency next year. We will be able to evaluate long-term fits while staying competitive. Excited about the team. Sorry about that. We like our group. They work well together. They have good work ethic and a desire to compete. Key factors this year would be player development. You know, those young guys must continue to take a step forward and contribute to us in order for us to grow as a team. I believe that our biggest strength is the depth of our team. We have to get more defensive-minded. Versatility and creativity to be essential to our defense. Focus will be on establishing on-court toughness and physicality. Defensive emphasis will be on creating turnovers, taking charges, fighting through screens, picking up full court, trapping, playing zone, protecting the rim, etc. I want to acknowledge that our coach Billy Donovan was inducted into the Hall of Fame. Congrats, Billy.
Thank you.
And several of the players came out to Springfield to support him. That says something about the kind of coach Billy is and the relationship he cultivates with his players. Billy has done a great job with the group last year and will continue pushing them to play a specific way this year. Billy and his staff have done a tremendous job preparing the group. I trust Billy 100%. We made huge strides last year. We're aligned and players are bought in. We are confident in this group and excited to show our fans the team that plays with consistency, toughness, and pride every night. Building while competing is the goal. Every decision tied to that. And now we will take your questions.
Casey Johnson, Chicago Sports Network. Hi, Arturas and Billy. Arturas, are all 20 people here, and is everyone able to practice tomorrow?
They're all here. 𝗁𝗶𝗹 is going to be limited. He had a calf strain in August, but we're working him back slowly, and he's going to be limited in training camp and preseason. Hopefully, we can see him at the end of preseason, but our focus is on him being ready for regular season.
Arturas, what's kind of your impression of where the Eastern Conference is at, just with some of the upheaval, injuries, etc., and did that affect or impact kind of some of the offseason decision-making that you guys had coming into this year?
Yeah, so I think there are two things. You've noticed a shift a little bit that a lot of teams are trying to make their roster deep so they can sustain, the 82 games, and if any injuries happen, you can survive the injuries, and the next man in line, plays. And And then the second one is the parity of Eastern Conference, because you talk to a lot of teams right now, they think they're in and they can compete. So yeah.
Joel Lorenzi with The Athletic. Hey, Arturas, you mentioned your intent for trading for 𝗦cie was to sort of cultivate this level of toughness. I think if OKC maybe showed anything is that you maybe need 4 or 5 of 𝗦cie. I guess, what are the first steps for you in terms of building a defensive identity? Where does he fit into that, and what are the pieces you think you're maybe missing?
Well, I think we were, talking about, playing better defensively. You got to start bringing people that play tough defense, and he was the first one in our minds. Other than that, I think a lot of what we're going to do defensively, and Billy can talk about that, is that we're going to have to do different things defensively. Would that be zone? Would that picking up full court? Would that be trapping? Because, we were one of the last teams in terms of creating turnovers. So defensive focus, continuing obviously offensively to do the same things that we've done last year, but with a focus on, getting better defensively. We've done those things at the end of the year much better, with, saying that the last 20 games, we were 14th offensively and 9th defensively. But I think we saw what happened in the playing game, and the level of physicality went up, and we couldn't handle it. So those very specific things we're going to have to do this year going into season.
Arturas, Drew Stevens, the Bigs. Arturas, this organization has not won a playoff series in a decade. Since you took over, it's recorded 1 winning season. What do you say to the growing pocket of Bulls fans who don't believe this organization is serious about winning more championships?
Well, going back a year ago when we, got into this transition and we in this, starting our second year, I think we were messaging the fan base that this is the way we have to do it. We have to be patient. We have to do the right way, and we can't skip steps. So I think for this team, for next year, we got to show growth, and we got to get better every year. Again, we saw the glimpse at the last year. We also saw our how we played against Miami, and those lessons are learned. But I think this group is pretty young, and there's a lot of potential there.
Joe Colley, sometimes. Arturas, how serious are you guys about trying to get a deal done with 𝗁𝗶𝘶 at some point, or at least start talking about that? Or is it kind of set in stone that he is going to test free agency and you guys will just have to be bidders in this?
Well, I'm not going to talk about, the negotiations or conversations. We had a lot of them. But what I can tell you is that, we love 𝗁𝗶𝘶. He's, improved the last 2 years. Has been great last year. And, hopefully he's going to be here for a long time. When the time comes, we'll talk to him and his representation.
And the second part to that, 𝗁𝗶𝘶 probably is the closest fringe all-star, but you've talked about roster depth and pointed around the Eastern Conference. A lot of those deeper rosters have all-stars. You guys do not currently have an all-star. How do you change that? How do you justify saying, well, we're just going with depth, but you still don't have those dudes?
Well, I think the team success as well is essential to getting your guys to be all-stars. I think we are focused on winning, and those guys have to get better this year, and team success will establish them if they are good enough to be all-stars or not. I mean, you can argue that if Josh and 𝗁𝗁𝘁 had those kind of months like they had in March, in January or December, they could have been there. So I think we got to focus on our internal development and continue adding, players in the draft, and just continue developing guys internally.
Billy, obviously there was quite a bit of talk of your offensive transformation last season and the style of play, how you completely overhauled that. You've heard Arturas talk about the way you closed this last season defensively, especially with the addition of Isaac. What is the plan to kind of form a defensive identity that can carry you through 82 games this season?
Yeah, I mean, I give our guys a lot of credit, Casey, because I think that the transformation offensively in terms of changing that style really speaks to, I think, one, the condition they came in and how they practiced and got ready to do that, right? So that was, I think, a good evolution for the group. The other part of it, too, defensively, as you go through the offseason, you really start to break down how do you get better, how do you improve. The first thing we have to look at is the fact that teams took 4 more shots than we did per game. And I think our net rating was minus 1.6, and we had the 13th best, I think, effective field goal percentage. So we shot the ball pretty well from pretty much all areas on the floor. But we really need to find ways to generate more opportunities and more possessions for ourselves. So, for example, when you start to break it down, I think the first thing you look at is we're 29th in the league in forcing turnovers. Now, that doesn't mean we need to run around and gamble and go for steals, but when you look at where the steals come from, a lot of times it comes from deflections, active with your hands. We're 29th in the league there, 28th in the league in offensive rebounding. We turn the ball over more than our opponents. I think there's controllable things that we need to focus on to try to flip that number, because that's really, really what's going to be important. So the defensive part of it is did a good job in transition, did a good job, I think, rebounding the ball, as a group collectively. But the other areas, activity with our hands, deflections, the biggest reason we made a jump, and Arturas mentioned it, going from where we were to 9th, was the rim protection. We're 28th or 29th in charges. There's these things physically that I think everybody inside of our team is capable of doing, right? So that's kind of where the focus has got to be on what are those things that are going to help generate more possessions for us. And there's a lot of things you can do. Offensive rebounding, taking care of the basketball, deflections, charges. We were not a great team on loose balls, coming up with loose balls. Those are areas, I think, where we can maybe help ourselves and make a jump defensively instead of just being like, okay, it's going to be one-on-one. This guy's got to guard this guy's got to guard that guy. Isaac is a tremendous defender, seen him obviously very closely in Cleveland, but we don't have everybody built like that. So how do we generate and manufacture extra possessions? That's one of the focuses, I think, for us defensively is going to be on those things.
𝗏𝗏 Arturas, you guys are in a similar position now to the one where you took over, where you have a young group and cap space coming up. As you guys formulate a plan or figure out how you want to move forward, what lessons did you learn from the first time that you overhauled the roster, or mistakes do you hope to avoid as you formulate the next plan and next roster iteration?
Well, probably going back, 4 years ago, 2021, 22, I think we, executed a huge plan of revamping the roster and did it very quickly over the one summer. And I think, after making the playoffs and waiting for the guys coming back from injury, I think it took us a while to spin out of it when there was lack of success. So I think now, looking back at last year and the success that we had with this young group going into second year and having the flexibility after this year and continuing, to evaluate these players right now for long fits, I think it's going to give us, huge opportunity to build this roster. And
when you're talking about evaluating players, what is important to you with how you're going to evaluate, especially the young group?
How players impact winning. And I think Billy and I, we talk about winning all the time. And the new guys that came in last year, they found it very refreshing that we focus on winning and how every player can impact winning. So we're going to focus on winning every game without putting any, goals to, on a team besides just getting better and growing together.
Kind of building off that, you said trying not to put too many goals on this team. Are the playoffs the goal for this year? And if so, what do you feel like is maybe different about this group, about the approach that would help you guys get over the hump that you've hit the last 3 years?
Well, again, I think, we don't have, at the end of the day, our ultimate goal is obviously to win the championship. But we in a position where we have to focus on our growth and what we've done well last year and what we need to do this year. We've talked with Billy. There's a certain specific way we have to play in order to win games. We watched playoffs. We saw how physical and demanding physically was, every game. So our guys got to play that way, and this year will show if they're capable of doing it.
Billy, Josh Hicks, Honor Daily News. Congrats on the Hall of Fame. Throughout your plenty of years of experience, you obviously have a lot of experience when it comes to young players and development and growth. What lessons have you learned from your coaching all throughout those years that really prepare you for this specific chapter with the specific roster that you have of the young talent that you guys have?
In terms of like when you say the development piece, like you talk about anything specifically, what you're talking about?
Any type of areas, growth on the court, off the court, character, etc.
Yeah, I understand when you have a young player, people want to see the young player play just to see what the guy can do. I think a perfect example of that was 𝗦𝗶𝘶 last year. There was just things, quite honestly, early in the year that he just was not doing that I didn't really feel like he earned the opportunity to get extended minutes. And every player is a little bit different, and their path to growth is a little bit different, right? 𝗦𝗶𝘶 is the kind of guy that I don't want to say he wants to make mistakes, but he embraces mistakes as an opportunity to learn. And I think the one thing you saw from him is as the season unfolded, everything he got, he really earned, and he did a really good job. The thing I've tried to do, I'm using him as an example as a young player, the thing I've tried to do with him this summer is this is going to be a totally different situation for him this year. He's no longer a guy that didn't play maybe the first 30, 40 games, and then after the All-Star break kind of got an opportunity to start. He's going to be a different level on the scouting report this year than he was. Io, went through that, I think, after his second year. It's really not so much the minutes. They all need minutes to grow, but it's more how do they become impactful players where they're impacting their teammates, and how do they impact winning? And there's a lot of different ways. So that's kind of where my focus on, and that covers a wide range of things. That's how they rest, how they eat. I mean, you can ask 𝗦𝗶𝘶 this, midway through the year, even when he wasn't playing a lot, he said to me, I am exhausted. Like there's processes these guys go through that you got to help them with besides ball handling, passing, shooting, just how to be a pro, how to get yourself prepared to play, how do you impact the game, how do you pay attention to scouting reports, how do you watch film, do you go home and actually work and do some things, or do you, not do anything at night? Like I think those are the things you try to help players with, and then hopefully those things transfer onto the court.
Zachary Draves with Clutch Points. Arturas, you said earlier about wanting to stay competitive, but then also focusing on the inevitability of free agency after the season with many of the players. How do you strike that balance going into this season with wanting to stay competitive, but then knowing full well about the future of many of the core players on this team?
Well, probably we'll stay present in the moment, and we're gonna look at this year, at this team, how we're going to start, how we're going to go through the season, and, all those very specific goals and how we want to play and how the guys have to respond. We're probably going to have to play, long rotations because, we wanted to play fast and high pace. So we'll see, during the year, and that information collected is going to help us, to make those decisions.
I'm going to break a Billy Donovan Cardinals sin and ask you about starting lineups.
Great.
I know you really liked Kevin Huerter starting. I think that group of Giddey, Kevin, Kobe, Vooch, and 𝗦𝗶𝘶 was like 7-1, 8-1, something like that. Are you sold on that's sustainable, or do you have to look? You guys talk about defense. Do you have to look at maybe an Okoro coming in and being that defensive presence, that defensive stopper that could kind of change the look of things, and not ruling out Pat
Right.
Williams, but at the same time, it seems like that lineup worked, but do you feel it's a sustainable starting lineup?
Yeah, I think it's a very fair question, Joe, just because, generally your second unit guys are going against second unit guys, and no disrespect to any of those guys because it's a hard league to play in. But, there's so many things that go into that question. One, last year we staggered Kobe a lot. We played him the first 4 minutes and brought him back with the second unit. But I think those are things we're going to have to, really take a look at. And I think, as Arturas mentioned, we're going to have to use our whole roster. And last year was probably the first year that we kind of rotated 10, so to speak, during the course of the game. I think, to answer your question, I think that I would be open, and I think being around these guys, they're all pretty much open of doing what's best. Maybe it's starting Kevin, maybe it's starting Isaac. I'm not really sure yet. Certainly defensively, with Isaac being out there, just on his body of work, you'd say, okay, there's that guy on the anywhere probably from 1 through 4, he can guard any of those kind of guys, right? But to your point, there's also some evidence that Kevin out there was pretty good too. So I think it's going to be probably something we're going to have to look and view, because at the end of last season, one of the things that, with the way the group played after the All-Star break, after the trade, Trey Jones got hurt and so did Io. They're back now. So now you're starting to talk about, how we mix and match and rotate the players in there. And that may take a little bit of time. It may require changing some of the starting lineup or the rotations or how that works. Since this is kind of starting training camp, knock on wood, we can stay whole with our health.
We're going to take a few more. Josh, go ahead. My bad.
Arturas, why is that 15-5 stretch in your mind more representative of this team than the 19-point loss it suffered to the Heat in what was the most important game of the season?
No, I think during that 20-game stretch, we learned certain things, and then obviously we learned a lot from losing to Miami as well. And, the way we kind of physically couldn't handle, the physicality of Miami Heat in that game. And I think those are the lessons that they have to take into the season. And we'll see how they respond this year. I'm looking forward to watching them in training camp. There's going to be a lot of competition. We talked about, long rotations, and, the guys are ready to work.
𝗦𝗫 with ABC7 and 𝗦𝗫cie 𝗶𝗹 TV. I'm curious about the plan for 𝗦𝗫cie. We saw Modest play a couple of games last year out at Hoffman Estates. He's one of the youngest players in the league. Should we anticipate seeing him playing a lot of G League games this year?
Well, in terms of incorporating him into, we'll have to look at our training camp and how he does. I mean, so far we've watched him in the gym, and the great thing is that he doesn't need the ball, So he plays really well without a ball, and we're not going to put high expectations. So what's going to happen? We're just going to see him in training camp and how he does in preseason, and we'll make those decisions then.
Yeah, I think being around Noah in Summer League, to Arturas' point, I think the one thing that was encouraging to me is I think he's got instinctively a pretty good feel of how to play. Like, he doesn't put himself in a lot of difficult situations. He's very long athletically. He's going to have to get better with his strength. He's going to have to get better, I think, guarding the ball one-on-one. I think his shooting, he's got good form, but that will need to get better. But I think, like Arturas said, with his, as young as he is, this is going to be a process for him. But he's a great kid. He's a really good worker. And I think just instinctively, he really knows how to play the game. And that's a huge advantage for a young player. Even though there's physical things that he has to get better with and there's skill things he has to get better at, one of the most difficult things to offset is when a guy just doesn't have a great feel how to play. When I'm talking about his feel, he's very good cutting into open space. He understands how to space. When he does get the ball, he doesn't try to do too much and put himself in harm's way. So maybe a better way of saying his feel is he's got a very, very good understanding of playing within himself. And I think probably what's helped him is being overseas and playing professionally. He really does a good job playing within himself. And as those other areas get better, I think you'll start to see him evolve into the player, we're all hoping he can be.
You touched on him briefly, but I'm just kind of curious, since he's your major new face, a detailed scouting report on Isaac, both coaching him as an opponent and what you've got to know about him personally since you've acquired him.
Yeah, the one thing I think I respected right away about him and the conversations we have is everything that he talks about is always we, which I admire. Like, a lot of times, what's my role, or they get into what they need to do, or he's really talking more about how do I impact a team? What do you need? What does a team need to be? Who do we need to be? And I respect that. I've always had great admiration for him when he was at Cleveland. We saw them a lot. He always guarded the other team's best player. He's physical. I do think on Cleveland's team, they're probably with Donovan Mitchell and Garland and Mobley, there maybe wasn't a lot of opportunity offensively. You know, I think he's worked hard on his shooting from the corners. He's gotten better in that area. I do think the toughness and the physicality he brings will help our team. I think in my conversations with him, he's just a veteran guy with a lot of experience, and he's gained a lot of experience still being relatively young. So I really have enjoyed being around him, and I would say the thing that comes to mind to me is he's a total team guy. I don't worry about that with him. We got to get some other guys to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yep, thank you.